Hi! Welcome to the Technology and Livelihood Education video lesson. My name is Teacher Janelle and I will be your teacher for today. Today, we will be learning about bread and pastry production, which is one of the major area in TLE. In this week, we will going to study about learning outcome number 2. Prepare and use fillings. Are you ready? Okay, that's good to hear. So now let's proceed. Third quarter, learning outcome number 2, prepare and use fillings, module 3, week 5 to 6. This module was designed to help you master the nature of technology and livelihood education, specifically on bread and pastry production. The lessons are arranged to follow the standard sequence of the course. This module is divided into 4 lessons, namely, Lesson 1, Identification of fillings appropriate in specific cakes. Lesson 2, Classification of frostings. Lesson 3, Sidings based on the required recipe specification and product characteristics. And Lesson 4, Assembling slice or layer cakes. We have here the following objectives. At the end of the lesson or of the module, you should be able to 1. Prepare and select fillings in accordance with required consistency and appropriate flavors. 2. Fill and assemble slice or layer sponges and cakes according to standard recipe specification, enterprise practice, and customer preferences. 3. Select coatings and sidings according to the product characteristics and the required recipe specification. Lesson 1. Identification of fillings appropriate in specific cakes. There are many cake filling types that you can choose to add to your cake to give it more flavor and intrigue. A cake with a filling consistently appears to stand out, and frequently somebody will choose a filled cake over a plain cake since they realize the filling will give additional flavors. Here are some points that should be taken into consideration when choosing a filling for a cake. Number 1. Think about the kind of the cake and be certain that the filling will complement the cake's flavor. Number 2. Take into consideration the storage of the cake. Do not select a filling that requires refrigeration when it will not be possible to refrigerate the cake because of its size. Number 3. If the cake will be exposed to a warm temperature, such as at a summer picnic, do not choose a filling that will melt or be a safety under those conditions unless it can be stored in a cooler or thread refrigerator. Number 4. If the cake must be made a day or so ahead of when it will be eaten, be sure that the filling will hold up to that period of time. Number 5. Consider the storing different cake filling types. Number 6. The amount of filling you need will vary depending on the type of filling, the type of cake, number of layers, and personal preferences. Generally, 1/2 cup of filling per layer should be sufficient. This may be too much if the filling is very rich or you may prefer a little more than 1/2 cup of some fillings, but be careful not to add too much, causing the cake to become unstable. Different cake fillings. 1. Custard. It is a cooked filling containing cornstarch, flour, egg yolks, and milk. Custard filling is a smooth, velvety sort filling like pudding. Any filling that contains cornstarch or flour must be heated to the point of boiling gradually. The first stall burning and afterward bubbled for, in any event, a moment to thicken to its fullest. The surface of the custard should be covered with plastic wrap or wax paper to prevent a film from forming while it is cooling. Examples of these are chocolate custard filling and lemon custard filled cake roll. Number 2. Fruits. There are many fruits that can be cooked into a filling for cakes that will give the cake an additional exceptional flavor. A portion of the normal natural products utilized are strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, peaches, apricots. When utilizing natural product fillings, a channeling of icing is applied on head of the layer around the external edge of the cake to go about as a dam to hold the filling in the middle of the layers. New natural products can likewise be included between the layers. However, this sort of cake should just be collected as inside a couple of long periods of eating it. Example of this is the gluten-free chocolate cake with strawberries. Number 3. Frosting. The same frosting used to frost the cake is used for a filling between layers. This is a great way to add flavor and moistness to the cake. Some of the common frosting types that are used as fillings are buttercream, boiled cream cheese, whipped cream, and ganache. Cakes with fillings or frostings should be stored according to the type of frosting being used. Example, Grandma's dairy-free carrot cake. Number 4. Jelly. Jam or preserves can be used to add an easy fruit-flavored filling to a cake. You can add flavor to the cake without any additional preparations. Using jelly filling on a layer of a cake, use a piping of frosting around the edge of the layer to keep the jelly, jam, or preserves confined, and then select your favorite flavor and spread it on a layer inside the pipe frosting cake can be. Cakes with this type of filling can be stored at the room temperature for at least 4 days, as long as the frosting is stored at room temperature. The filling can be refrigerated if the frosting on the cake calls for it. Examples of these are lemon raspberry cake and jelly roll cake. Number 5. Whipped cream. A filling using whipped cream provides a light fluffy filling with a delicate flavor. Whipped creams are sometimes stabilized by adding gelatin to make them hold up better. A cake with whipped cream filling should be refrigerated and served at the same day that is made. Example of this is stabilized whipped cream. Number 6. Glazes and syrup. Glazes and syrups can be used as fillings but will not provide for a filling with any thickness. They do provide extra flavor and help seal in the moisture of the cake. The cake can be stored at a room temperature when filling is a glaze or syrup, unless the cake or frosting requires refrigeration. Example of this is what we call low-carb mirror glaze. Lesson 2. Classifications of frostings. What is frosting class? Frosting is a thick, fluffy, pipeable, and flavorful substance usually used to coat the outside part of the cake. This is a sweet, regularly rich coating made of sugar with a fluid, for example, water or milk, that is frequently improved with fixings like butter, egg whites, cream cheddar, or flavorings. We have here the three main functions of frosting. Number 1. Frosting contributes a flavor and richness to the cake. It additionally includes intrigue and gives a smooth surface to design on. Number 2. Frosting improves the cake's appearance. Special occasion cakes become more festive with frostings and decorations. Number 3. Frostings improve the keeping the characteristics of the cake by framing a defensive covering around it, fixing in dampness and flavor, and permitting it to be eaten over a few days. We have here some classifications of frostings. Number 1. Buttercream frostings. Buttercream is the most widely recognized kind of frosting, and it is made by joining a sort of fat generally, however, not generally spread with sugar. Buttercream some of the time utilizes eggs to give a smooth and breezy consistency, and the opportunities for including the flavors and shading are almost interminable. Different types of buttercream frostings. Letter A. Simple buttercream. This one is basically a blend of fat, for example margarine, and confectioner sugar, otherwise known as powdered sugar. Discretionary fixings incorporate eggs. It's either the whole egg or egg yolk or egg whites only. Milk, creamer, or non-fat milk solids. Note that cream cheddar icing is only straightforward buttercream, which uses cream or cheddar cream rather than butter as the fat. Letter B. Decorator buttercream. Since butter will in general dissolve at room temperature, buttercream frostings isn't ideal for delivering the brightening blossoms and curlicues to see an extravagant wedding cakes. This needs gentility. It compensates for insoundness, making it ideal in creating brightening chives. Tragically, it needs flavor, so it's normal for a modest quantity of butter to be incorporated. Letter C. Buttercream or meringue buttercream, and this is also called Swiss or Italian meringue buttercream. This variety is made with beating a hot syrup of sugar and water into a fundamental egg white front. At the point with whipping, Mollified spread into the subsequent meringue to make the icing. Warming the meringue gives it additional solidness, which implies this icing is incredibly light and vaporous. Letter D. French buttercream. This is most likely the most extravagant buttercream, but it's additionally incredibly light in surface. It is made by including bubbling syrup into beaten egg yolks and afterward stirring into a frothy consistency to which modified is then butter included and beaten some more until light and rich. Letter E. Pastry cream buttercream, otherwise known as German buttercream. This variety of buttercream is made by joining baked good creams, which is the custard, with some kind of included starch, for example, flour or cornstarch, with spread and potentially extra confectioner's sugar. Example of these are buttercream flour cakes and wedding cake buttercream frostings. Number 2. Cook frostings. Cook frostings is an old fashion of frostings. We have also the different types of cook frostings. Letter A is the 7-minute frosting. This is traditionally cooked icing and it is made by warming sugar, water, and corn syrup to a bubble. At that point, emptying this bubbling syrup into a bowl of solid panicle meringue with a blender going. This stunt is including a hot fluid gradually focusing on the side of the bowl instead of legitimately into the meringue. Letter B. Stiff peak meringue. Adding a hot liquid gradually focusing on the sides of the bowl instead of legitimately into a meringue. Example of this is what we call boiled icing or Italian meringue. Number 3. Whipped cream frosting. Whipped cream frosting consists of whipped cream, powdered sugar, and flavorings. What could be less difficult? As with buttercream, the cornstarch in the powdered sugar balances out the icing. It's conceivable to overbeat this kind of icing, which can make it into grainy. So beat just until firm panicles show up. Cakes, cupcakes, shortcakes, and treats with this sort of icing must be refrigerated. Example of this is the rosette piping decoration cake, like this. Fourth one, royal frosting. Royal frosting is a hard, fragile icing utilized for embellishing cakes and treats. You can make it without any preparation, utilizing powdered sugar, egg whites, and fluid, yet numerous dough punchers incline towards utilizing meringue powder, which is accessible at the basic kitchen, flexible stores, and even some supermarkets. The meringue powder is joined with a fluid, at that point typically colored with food coloring. We have here the example, which is the royal icing pipe white wedding cake. We can use different types of food coloring, specifically gel food coloring. Number 5, ganache. is just a chocolate liquefied with substantial cream. This frosting makes a wonderful glossy covering on cakes and treats. Here's a simple pastry stand to pull off with natively constructed ganache. If you chill it and beat the ganache until it's feathery and firm, at that point, structure the blend into balls. You will end up with truffles. You can likewise chill and beat the ganache and utilize the feathery outcome to rapidly ice a layer cake. Example of this is what we call strawberry cake with chocolate ganache. Number 6. Glaze. Glazes are the easiest frostings. Powdered sugar is joined to a fluid to shape a slender consistency. Glaze are typically poured or showered over the highest points of cake and treats. This structure a sparkly, hard covering when the coating sets. Softened chocolate can be utilized as a coating all alone. Example of this is what we call chocolate Guinness cake with glaze. Next, Lesson 3. Sidings based on the required recipe specification and product characteristics. But before that, I have a question for you. This is, why do we love cakes? Okay, so celebrations are always special and it becomes more pleasurable when you add a delicious cake. A party without a cake is incomplete, as it considered as one of the best parts of any celebration. Regardless, it is an adult or child, people or of every age expect a delicious cakes. Everyone gathers several things to make a celebration, but a cake is always a priority. Here are some characteristics of a cake. Number 1, appearance. The above all else thing that pulls anyone is the presence of the cake. A cake ought to be excellent and appealing to get the absolute first look at each individual present on the floor. All that we talk about the cake comes after the appearance. Along these lines, appearance is one of the most significant highlights of the cake. Number 2, taste. You know why everybody adores cake? Clearly, due to the taste. One of the exceptionality fundamental yet significant highlights of any cake is its taste. How the cake tastes and what you feel after having a solitary nibble characterizes the entire presence of the cake. A cake ought to be improved in taste and ought to fulfill you totally. Number 3, a cake ought to be iced pleasantly, neither more nor less. Cakes without icing look exhausting and boring, right? So you should ice your cake beautifully. Next, baking. A good cake is one that is prepared with legitimate advances. The cake should be rise totally and ought not resemble a player. It ought to be feathery, springy, and damp. Having less fixings and appropriate heating techniques make the cake additionally engaging. Utilizing quality fixings are consistently additional items. And last, flavors. The most essential component of any cake is its flavor. Individuals are picky, and cakes are made for everyone. Chocolate vanilla, butterscotch, strawberry, and a lot more flavors are added to serve. Each taste and flavors are the focuses of fascination on any cake. Next, sidings of cake. When we talk about the sidings of cake, it pertains to different fillings, garnishes on how we will decorate or present a cake. We have here the steps. Number 1, first, we must consider the flavor of the cake and what kind of fillings will complement. Second, consider the storage of the cake. Do not select a filling that requires refrigeration when it will not be possible to refrigerate the cake because of the size. Third, if the weather is too hot, do not choose a filling that will melt. Fourth, the amount of filling you need will vary depending on the type of filling, type of cakes, and number of layers. Number 5, choose garnishes that will add eye appeal to the product. We have here some possible fillings and sidings. Number 1, we have the custards. Like I mentioned before, it is like a pudding, creamy smooth type of filling. Custard type filling should not be frozen. Always remember that. Second, we have fruits. When using a fruits, a piping or frosting applied on the top of the layer around the edge of the cake act as a dam to hold the filling in between. The fruit continues to ripen even when refrigerated, and its juices will begin to soak into the cake. If the cake has cooked fruit fillings that does not contain eggs, it can be stored at room temperature for up to 2 days. Refrigerate the cake for longer storage. Third one, frostings. Some of the common frosting types that are used as fillings are buttercream, boiled icing, cream cheese, whipped cream, and ganache. Cakes with frosting fillings should be stored according to the type of frosting that you are going to use. Number 4, jelly. So jelly, jam, or preserves can be used to add an easy fruit flavored filling to a cake. You can add to the cake without any additional preparations. When using jelly filling on a layer of a cake, use a piping bag to frost around the edge of the layer to keep the jelly or jam confined, and then select the flavor that is your favorite and spread it on the layer inside the pipe frostings. Your cake can be stored at a room temperature for up to 4 days as long as frosting can be stored at room temperature. The filling can be refrigerated if the frosting on the cake calls for it. Number 5, whipped cream. A filling using whipped cream provides a light fluffy filling with a delicate flavor. Whipped creams are sometimes stabilized by adding gelatin to make them hold up better. Next, number 6, glazes and syrups. This can be used as fillings but will not provide for a filling with any thickness. They do not provide extra flavor and help seal in the moisture of the cake. The cake can be stored at room temperature when the filling is a glaze or syrups, unless the cake or frosting requires refrigeration. Simply, syrup is composed of 1 ratio of 1:1, 1 part sugar, and 1 part of water. Lesson 4. Assembling slice or layer cakes. We have here the steps in assembling simple layer cake. First, prepare and assemble all the tools and equipment that you will going to use. Example of these are the cake, spatula, filling, butter knife, toothpick, turntable, and pastry brush. Number 2. Prepare all the ingredients and note that proper temperature. Cool the layers of cake completely before assembling icing. Icings and filling should be spread out at the correct temperature. Third one, trim the cake layers if necessary. Remove any ragged edges. Slightly rounded tops are easily covered by icing, but excessively large bumps may have to be cut off. Fourth, brush all crumbs from cakes. Loose crumbs make the icing difficult. Fifth, place the bottom layer upside down to give a flat surface for the filling on a cardboard cake circle of the same diameter. Place the cake at the center of the cake turntable. If a cake circle or turntable is not available, place the cake on a serving plate. Slip sheets of wax paper or parchment paper under the edges of the cake to keep the plate clean. Number 6. Spread filling on the bottom layer out to the edges. If the filling is different from the outside frosting, be careful not to spread the filling over the edges. One way to avoid spilling the filling over the edge is to pipe a row of icing using or use for cake sides around the edge of the cake layer to form a barrier to hold the filling inside. Use the proper amount of filling. If applied too heavily, filling will ooze out when top layer is put in place. Number 7. Place the top layer on the bottom layer right side up. Number 8. Ice the cake. If a thin or light icing is used, pour or spread the icing onto the center of the cake. Then spread it to the edges and down to the sides with a spatula. If a heavy icing is used, it may be necessary to spread the sides first, then place a good quantity of icing at the center of the top and push it to the edges with a spatula. Filling cake layers. For a classic round or rectangular cake, you may want to put 2 labeled cakes together, joined with your favorite filling. This adds height and drama to your design, and it's easy to do. We have here some steps. Step 1. Fill a decorating bag with medium consistency icing and use tip Number 12, or use a coupler without adding a tip. Start with the bottom layer, labeled side up. Create a dome or circle of icing just inside the edge of the cake, and this will prevent any filling from seeping out when the next layer is added. Step 2. Fill the center with icing, fruit filling, or pudding. Step 3. Place the next layer on top, making sure that it is labeled. The weight of the layer will cause the circle of the icing to expand. Place the top layer, labeled side down, so that the cake or the top of the cake is perfectly smooth and labeled. So that are the steps in filling cake layers. And now that we are done, let us now practice what we have learned. For the activity number 1, titled Jumbled Letters. Directions. Identify the word being described by arranging the scrambled words. Write your answer on your answer sheet. Number 1. This filling provides a light fluffy filling with a delicate flavor. Number 2. This can be used to add an easy fruit-flavored filling to a cake. I will give you 10 seconds to answer. The answer for number 1 is whipped cream. Number 2, jelly jam preserves. Number 3, this adds flavor and moistness to the cake. 4, this is a cooked filling containing cornstarch, flour, and egg yolk and milk. Number 5, strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, peaches, and apricots can be used in preparing for this filling. I will give you 15 seconds to answer. The answer for number 3 is frosting. Number 4, custard. Number 5, fruits. Great! Activity number 2. Identify me. Directions. Choose the correct answer and write it on your answer sheet. Are you ready? Great! So now let's start. Number 1. Cakes with this fruit filling can be stored at room temperature for up to 4 days, 1 week, 1 month, as long as the frosting is stored at room temperature. Number 2. A cake with whipped cream filling should be refrigerated and served at the same day, the next day, after 2 days that it is made. Number 3. The surface of custard should be covered with plastic wrap, parchment paper, doily to prevent a film from forming while it is cooling. I will give you 10 seconds to answer. For number 1, the answer is 4 days. Number 2, the same day. Number 3, plastic wrap. Number 4, a filling using whipped cream provides a light, stiff, foamy, fluffy filling with a delicate flavor. Number 5, whipped creams are sometimes stabilized by adding gelatin, fruits, corn to make them hold better. I will give you 5 seconds to answer. Answer for number 4, light. Number 5, gelatin. Okay, my dear students, so this will be the end of our lesson, and I hope you've learned a lot and enjoyed our topics. Before we end, I have here a saying: baking is about multitasking. If you are organized and prepared, that's half the battle, by Johnny Lazzini. Thank you for listening, and I, Teacher Janelle, signing off.